Hi everyone! I am so excited today to bring you a brand new book from Ellie Marks, who is fast becoming one of my favourite illustrators. This is called Victoriana or Victoriana, depending on how you say it, and it is of course Victorian style designs. And as you can see from the black cover, it goes really well with her previous books. The first one was Flower Haiku, and the second one was Age of Elegance. So if you're looking for more of her work, I've reviewed both of these books and I'll leave the links in the descriptions below. So this is the artist edition of the book. You can also get it from her Etsy as a digital download. Again, links will be in the description. And as you can see, it's spiral bound and it has really nice thick cardstock paper. So let's get into it. So the first page is all of the kind of copyright information and Ellie's website links. And then a little dedication to my beautiful coastal town of Alameda, where history comes to life. Hopefully I'm saying that right, Alameda? I don't know. Yeah, and then we've got a little illustration here for you to colour, but you could do something in the background of this if you wanted, maybe with some distress inks or some pastels, something like that, just to fill the space a little bit. We've also got a book belongs to page where you can pop your name and again another illustration surrounding that. As you can see, all of the illustrations themselves are one-sided, but as we move through the book, in fact you might see on the next page, yes, Ellie has included some sort of background or something that has inspired her in creating the illustration that you see on the right hand side. So this illustration is depicting a Victorian home. And Ellie says that well-to-do Victorian homes had a specific layout to accommodate the family and the help as well. So on the first floor, a front parlour was usually reserved for receiving guests, and the back parlour was used as a family room. You might still have this if you live in the UK particularly. We still have a front room which barely ever gets used, and then the back room or the middle room will be the room that you use as your living room. A lot of old terraced houses in the UK, terraced being a house that has an attached house on either side, they have that kind of layout. So it said there was the kitchen, the heart of the house, and the scullery. Family bedrooms were located upstairs and servants usually slept in the attic. Victorians decorated their homes with lavish curtains, carpets, intricate wallpaper, painting and houseplants. Fireplaces were a must for heating the houses. Victorians used candles and oil or gas lamps, and later in the era, electricity. In wealthy homes, water was pumped into the kitchens. Baths were portable and made of copper and tin, and later in the Victorian era, flush toilets became common. So I really like how we're getting loads of interesting information and tidbits on this side, and then we're getting a gorgeous illustration to go with it. I love learning and reading about, you know, what has prompted a certain illustration or what it's all about, especially when it is rooted in real life as well. So this text page always has a little bit of an illustration to go along with it. So there's something to colour and tie it in. So as I said earlier, Ellie is fast becoming a favourite illustrator of mine, purely because her style is so unique. I think I've talked about this before on previous reviews of her books, but it's so charming and cute and quaint. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone that doesn't like illustrations like this. I just love her depiction and her take on things and just her style basically. We've then got Up and Away. Hot air balloons, invented over a century earlier, continued being used in Victorian times. I won't read it all out to you, so you have something to read when you get your copy. But this is obviously all about hot air balloons and some interesting information about balloon records and how high they've managed to get in the balloons. So again, just looking at the illustrations, really charming. You've got the couple here dressed to the nines in their Victorian garb, seeing off the hot air balloons into the sky, and then landscape below. Next up is Victorian Bookshops. It says that they became more popular in Victorian towns as educated Victorians loved to read. Many bookshops also doubled as publishers. They carried history books, romantic fiction, poetry, travel and religious literature, as well as maps, newspapers and cards. So let's have a look at the illustration. As you can see, it's a landscape one, and this is the bookshop. I just love how quaint it is. I keep using that word, but that's the word I associate with Ellie's work. So bookshop, we've got travel books, romance, Around the World in 80 Days. You can see all these Jules Verne copies here. We've got Emma snuck in there and Jane Eyre. Then we've got the maps, the globe, And I just love the furniture and you know, the designs of the legs on the tables and things that she's really paid attention to. Yeah, just fantastic full scenes. That's what we're getting here, full kind of like looks and glimpses into a little world. So the next one is also landscape, so I won't turn it round, but it's called Victorian Fashion. And it says the Victorian era is famous for its fashion, which evolved from the bonnets and hoops early in the period to the bustles and the hats of the late 1800s. And it talks about crinoline and petticoats and things like that. So you can see we're looking into the window of the bridal shop here. You can just imagine the gorgeous glow of light being cast from the candelabra and, of course, all of the delicately designed dresses here. This one's called Tea Time, and it says that decadent high tea is often associated with Victorian times. Sandwiches had been invented by the 4th Earl of Sandwich, who asked his valet to bring him meat tucked in between 2 pieces of bread, and as a result of that, afternoon tea made it possible for women to receive mixed company at home without their husbands to chaperone. So it was quite liberating for women to dress down a bit, avoiding formal stiff dresses and spending time exchanging their opinions and gossip as women do. So yeah, let's have a look at the illustration. We've got the little cafe backdrop and the Parisian tables. Again, you know, there's lots of kind of nature also embedded in here. You'll always see a plant or a flower, but again, it's just that snapshot into a little piece of the Victorian world. So back round this way now, make sure you're lined up. This is the Victorian Christmas. It says that Victorians invented the modern Christmas that we know today. In the early 1800s, Christmas was barely celebrated. You couldn't believe it, could you, nowadays? But by the end of the century, it became the most important holiday of the year, and it was introduced by Queen Victoria, or rather her German-born husband, Prince Albert, when in 1848 a drawing of her royal family celebrating around a decorated Christmas tree was published. So then everybody in England started decorating a tree off of the back of that, and that's where the tradition was born. So this is a snowy scene. As you can see, we've got the girl looking out from her bed, looking out the window at the snow falling. There's a snowman and some rabbits with cute little footprints. And, you know, it's very difficult for me to search my vocabulary for more words other than just utterly charming, and just the fact that it's a full page scene that you can really immerse yourself into colouring. So next is Victorian Ballet. It says in mid-19th century, ballet had become a big hit with Victorians, and famous ballerinas were elevated to stardom. So we've got the ballet scene here. You can see that she's on the stage, and we have the scalloped lights here, and in the background some cardboard stage pieces to set the scene. Yeah, beautiful. I especially love the costume on this, the ballerina dress. It's not, you know, what you would think of today with the ballerina and the tutu and everything else, but it's very much a snapshot of what the ballerina would look like at that time. Oh baby, early strollers were invented in the 1700s, and by the time the Victorian era rolled in, these baby carriages became quite popular. As in many other matters, Queen Victoria set the tone because she bought 3 strollers for herself. The Victorian strollers were more than just baskets on wheels. They had patented improvements such as brakes, foldable models and attached umbrellas. So let's have a look. So we have the lady here. This could be the mum, it could be the nanny. She's wrapped in a shawl with her bonnet on, and she's taking the baby out for a walk through the park. We've got the bandstand here with the candles hanging down, and of course some rose bushes and trees and things in the background. And the baby's even sticking his arm out and shaking his rattle. So it's all about the strollers or the prams. You can see this really original shaped pram with the hood that comes over the top and lots of frills and bells and whistles and things. Brilliant. Oh, this is the one that I've done. It's called Shopping. So I'll just let you look at that while I read it. Shopping in Victorian times was generally considered a part of the woman's job, and everyday shopping for wealthier families was done by servants. Most shops, other than seamstresses or dressmakers, were owned by men. Earlier in the 1800s, store items did not have prices on them and required asking the shop owner for assistance. They were kept behind the counter, out of the shopper's reach, and by the mid-1800s that began to change and shops started to look more like the stores of our time, so I'm guessing they'll have had prices and labels and things like that. So again, another Prismacolor illustration. Are you surprised? No. Love how it's turned out. I spent a lot of time on really small details, which I'll show you in a second. I really wanted everything to look, I mean, my style doesn't look realistic anyway. It's not hyper realistic, but I wanted everything to have the proper look of whatever it was. So what I mean by that, if I bring it up to camera and focus you in, I really spent a lot of time, for instance, on the onions, getting the colours right, and putting little bits of dark patches on them to show a bit of different texture. Same again on the fish. I used some kind of, I think it was jade green that I used, and some seashell pink, just to give it a sort of look of a shimmer or iridescence that you get on scaly fish. And then the potatoes, I just did some scribbly lines with darker brown. What else? So we've got the peaches over here. I used one of my videos from previously that I did on colouring food, which I'll leave links for in the description, to colour these, because I kind of forgot how to colour peaches and stuff, so I had to look back at my own video. Got the eggs, and we've got the loaves of bread as well, and all the little jars of jam, and the garlic. I just googled garlic, and this is the kind of colour palette that it came up with. So yeah, I really tried my best to stick with the details, even though they're really, really small pieces of the image. But yeah, I'm really pleased with it, so hopefully you like it too. Next up, we have Victorian Halloween. So this was vying for being coloured first with the other one, but the other one won. As you know, I love anything Halloween. So Victorians love to celebrate Halloween, but back in the 1800s, it was less about kids and candy. It said that young Victorian men and women enjoyed costumed Halloween parties, popular costume choices being witches, ghosts, bats, cats, clowns and devils. The Victorians decorated their houses with autumn garlands, hanging apples and jack-o'-lanterns with twinkling candles inside, but they didn't make a huge deal about candy. Usually the treats would include nuts and candied apples and maybe a Halloween cake. But how fabulous is the illustration? You can see we've got the big Victorian house all decorated for Halloween with a bat carved here, a witch on the weather vane, we've got an owl looking on, and the black cat, and of course the lady here greeting us in her witch's outfit. This is called Queen Anne Beauties. Again, it's this way around, and it says Queen Anne style emerged in the United States, Canada and Australia, where it was known as Federation architecture at the end of the Victorian era. Queen Anne houses are beautiful and easily recognisable by their asymmetrical facades, overhanging eaves, whimsical towers that can be round, square or polygonal, a porch covering the entrance area, bay windows, and most of all, a wide variety of textures and decorations. Lots of bright colours and different wood, brickwork, mouldings, stained glass windows and things like that. So a bit of everything is chucked at these Queen Anne houses. I think that we're in some of the warmer climates here. You can see we've got a palm tree and it looks slightly more exotic. The design of this is really kind of haphazard, and I can imagine seeing one in real life would kind of blow your mind a little bit. You can see we've got the stained glass with the dolphin here, or is it a shark? I don't know. And just very decorative in general. Everything seems to have a different pattern on it. And we've got the little kitty sat on the windowsill soaking up the sun. I think I'll have to Google Queen Anne houses just to see what they look like in real life, because it seems like it's too sort of out of this world. But this one also looks the same. This is Victorian Architects. So it says Victorians created many new professions, including that of an architect. One of such architects was Joseph Leonard, a Texan who studied architecture in New York and then moved to California in the 1880s. Being an avid yachtsman, he took a liking to the quaint coastal town of Alameda, and within a decade built Leonardville, a neighbourhood of 54 stunning Queen Anne houses. I happen to know this because I live in Leonardville. Not me, Ellie. Many of Leonard's Victorians are still here, with their intricate porches, corner turrets, fish scale shingles and all sorts of embellishments. So yeah, it really is what we were saying before about the Queen Anne houses. They've just got a bit of everything chucked at them. It's kind of like something you'd imagine designing as a child, what's your dream house look like, and you come out with something like this that's just so outlandish, but absolutely fabulous. Man's best friend. So Victorians were responsible for changing attitudes towards domestic animals and turning them into family pets. So in the early 1800s, keeping pets became socially acceptable, and it was considered good for Victorian families with children, as it taught boys and girls to be more compassionate and responsible. Popular as pets were cats, birds and rabbits, but most of all, dogs captured the hearts of Victorians. So it says that one of the most exotic dog breeds popularised by Victorians in the Western world was the spectacular Afghan Hound, which was originally brought to England from Afghanistan by returning British officers. So you can see we've got the Afghan here, and this beautiful outdoor clock with lots of ivy circled around it and lots of hanging plants. Yeah, it looks like something you'd find in a conservatory or an orangery or some kind of outbuilding like that. This is called Below Stairs. Victorian households of means employed a variety of servants. Some families could only afford one servant, which was called the maid of all works, and it was often a young girl who had a thankless job of doing all the chores in the house from early morning to late at night. Sounds a bit like me. So you can see we've got her putting the washing out here. Again, it's all in that kind of era. She's got a bonnet on and, you know, the exact clothes of the period. We've got a well here where they would get their water, and of course the farm animals as well, you know, providing things like cheese and eggs and milk and stuff like that. Something old, something new. So again, we had the bridal store earlier, but now we have our actual bride stood in front of her beautiful mirror. And it says that without a doubt, weddings were one of the most important days in the lives of Victorian girls. For most young ladies, making a good match was the singular goal of their entire upbringing and education. Choosing the month for the wedding was an important decision. June was considered the luckiest month by Victorian brides. After all, it was named after Juno, the Roman goddess of marriage. Up until the mid-1800s, brides had not normally worn white to the wedding ceremony, but that all changed in 1840 when Queen Victoria married Prince Albert wearing a white wedding gown. So I think everybody just copied what Queen Victoria was doing all the time, and that's where the Victorian kind of period of style comes from. It's all down to her. So let's have a look at the wedding dress itself. It's got a fitted bodice and then a really wide skirt. The dresses were made of gauze, tulle, silk and lace, and the veil was attached to a tiara of flowers, which were usually orange blossoms, funnily enough. So again, lots of detail around the room. It's the whole scene. It's almost as if you're looking in at a photograph. We've got the portraits here on the wall, lots of florals and things and stained glass pieces. Just stunning. I'm not sure how I would tackle this veil with it being translucent material, but I definitely have a go. Then we have the nursery. So we get married and then we have a couple of babies. The nursery. While poor families in the 1800s shared living quarters with their children, Victorian nurseries of wealthy parents were a completely different game. Children spent most of their day in the nursery with nannies and governesses, leaving only for a walk in the park or a dance lesson. A child's daily schedule was quite rigid, revolving around breakfast, lunch, tea and dinner, always at the same time with no treats in between. Older children were permitted to join the mother for a lunch or spend some time in her dressing room. Visits with mother and father were treated as special and only happened during a certain time of the day, such as right before bedtime. Can you imagine it being a special occasion to go and see your kids? It's crazy to think about now, isn't it? But that's the system that happened back then. So she sat on her little window seat looking out onto a wintry landscape, it looks like. And we've got the little boy playing on the rocking horse. We've got a cat with his ball of wool and various other toys scattered around. The riding habit. Horseback riding was quite popular among ladies in Victorian times. Young ladies took lessons in horseback riding, usually starting with a small tame horse or a pony. So let's have a look. We've got a beautiful pony here, and the little girl is sat on the saddle holding the reins, again in all her Victorian clothing, and I guess she's got her trainer here, just showing her what to do and not letting her go too fast or fall off. Such a sweet illustration with the little flowers in the pony's mane and tail. We've got glorious gardens. Gardening was another field that took off during the Victorian era. Advances in technology and access to new types of plants, as well as the rise of middle class, all contributed to gardening's skyrocketing popularity. So Victorian gardens, again, like everything else, it's just very outlandish, isn't it? You've got these huge sculptures and statues, this massive pond, and, you know, loads and loads of greenery and botanics as well. It's saying here that Victorians were all about the conquest of man over nature. It's quite a formal and orderly gardening style with neatly trimmed bushes and symmetrical flower beds. It says that large estates often had a front and rear lawn that had lots of care and maintenance to be done. And public gardens became a place where families would gather for a walk and nannies would take the children. Then we've got all aboard. So we're talking about the trains now. It's one of the symbols of the rapid advances in science and technology in the Victorian era. In England, railway travel had become popular in the mid-1800s. So early on, some Victorian travellers had trepidations about travelling on trains because they believed that railway travel caused insanity, or that at high speeds over 50 miles an hour, the human body would start disintegrating. But despite those fears, in a few short decades, railway tracks had crisscrossed England and continental Europe. So we've got a peep into the train carriages here as we are stood on the platform. Beautiful, isn't it? And elegant, this period in time. We've got the suitcases and a parrot in his cage waiting there for the next train possibly. And yeah, I really cannot wait to kind of scour Instagram or Ellie's colouring page on Facebook and see what everyone else has done with these designs, because I know they're just going to look amazing when coloured. Bundle up. Winters in Europe and North America could be quite cold, and Victorians knew just how to dress for winter chill. In mid-1800s, women often wore cloaks rather than jackets because the puffy sleeves and wide skirts of their dresses required them to have something a bit looser. Hats and gloves were a must, of course, and then hand muffs for protecting your hands and keeping them nice and warm. And it even says that you could put a hot water bottle inside your muff. Now, I absolutely love hot water bottles. I've got mine here on my back as I speak. I don't think I could survive winter without a hot water bottle. It's one of my favourite things in life. So I'm pretty glad that the Victorians started doing that. So let's have a look at the next one. Victorian California. I happen to live in a Northern California town steeped in Victorian history, and so it seems fitting to dedicate one page of this book to my hometown of Alameda. Victorian ways of living spread beyond the Great Britain, and in mid-1800s landed on the beautiful shores of Northern California. And then Ellie goes on to describe the town and its origins, and apparently Alameda means poplar grove. It's famous for its gorgeous coastal oaks, some of which are older than the city itself, oaks, redwoods, palm trees and lush subtropical flowers. I'd really like to visit Alameda actually, it sounds like heaven. Another gorgeous illustration, the two little children sat on the swing overlooking water, and then we've got a couple of squirrels collecting their little acorns on the oak tree. Oh, that's the end of the book. So we do have a colour testing page. I think it's just one. Yeah, that's the last page of the book. So you can test any of your mediums, see how it reacts to this particular paper. Speaking of which, it is a beautiful cardstock. Let's do the ping test. Really thick and good quality. It's got a smooth texture to it. I was able to use coloured pencils and layer them absolutely fine. And of course it's bright white, as you can see. So all your colours will pop off the page. So as usual, links will be in the description for you to grab either this artist's edition or a downloadable PDF so you can print it off yourself. Another beautiful book from Ellie. She seems to produce them at a rate of knots, and I'm here for it. I want to see everything that she brings out in the future because it's absolutely stunning. Have a look at her other books if you wish, and let me know what you think in the comments. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon on Colour with Claire.